Today's the day.
Today is the day. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the Real Insight podcast, where we don't just review movies, we break them open. I'm Abby, and I'm here with my handsome co-host, Paul.
Hi guys and gals, to all my cinematic lovers. It's good to be here. And here, we dig deeper, decode different perspectives, and explore the cinematic layers that often go unnoticed. All right, we're tackling something pretty interesting today, as we stated in our show teaser.
That's right, guys. Today, we're starting strong with a film that's stirring up real conversation, The Woman in the Yard. That's right. So sit back, hit subscribe, and let's get ready to take this the real journey together.
Yeah, Helen in this one is a head-scratcher per some reviews, so this one's a little different. And you've also given us some synopsis of other horror movies too, right? So we can kind of see how they all connect.
Exactly. We got to figure out what the buzz is all about with this woman in the yard. You know, go past those initial reactions and trailers and see what's really going on.
Yeah, like how does it stack up against other horror flicks? Especially those that might be playing with similar themes or even, trying to trick the audience a bit.
And for you listening, you always want to get to the heart of things quickly, right? Have those aha moments without getting bogged down.
That's the goal. We're going to break it all down so you get a clear picture, of the movie and where it fits in with the whole horror genre.
All right, so The Woman in the Yard, let's get into it. One reviewer on YouTube, and there were a few that were a bit confused or disappointed. I can see and feel that sentiment from that trailer.
Oh yeah, the trailer that sets up a very specific vibe, right?
Totally. That creepy woman dressed in black, that line that sends chills down your spine, today is the day.
And that elongated shadow? Oh man, that's classic horror imagery right there.
It totally screams classic horror. But then comes the interesting part, right? What the movie couple actually experienced while watching the film.
Yeah, they were pretty surprised because it wasn't that straightforward horror they thought it would be from the marketing.
They even used the term bait and switch, which is strong, right? Look, they felt misled.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong reaction. It highlights that gap between expectation and reality. So right away you realize The Woman in the Yard, it's not just a typical horror flick. It shifts into something more psychological, a thriller that explores these deep themes of grief and trauma.
And that's what we need to understand, that unexpected turn.
Exactly. It's at the core of what makes this movie so interesting.
And it wasn't just one reviewer who felt that way. There was another reviewer that said the same thing, went in with low expectations and were blown away.
It really does seem like the marketing might be intentionally steering viewers in one direction, while the movie goes in a totally different one.
So is it really a bait and switch, though, if the film ends up being more complex and thought-provoking?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Yeah. On the one hand, you've got audiences who want what they were promised, right? Like if you're advertising a slasher film, they want those thrills and chills.
Right, they came for the jump scares.
Exactly. But then misleading them can be frustrating. On the other hand, sometimes messing with expectations can lead to something more powerful. A film that really stays with you.
It can make you think, even if it throws off some viewers who are expecting something else entirely.
Exactly. So it's this balancing act.
For sure. And, even if The Woman in the Yard isn't purely horror, it definitely has those elements, especially in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. The setup is definitely playing with those classic horror tropes.
This reviewer talked about how effective that woman in black was, and her shadow.
Like how it interacted with objects and even people in the house.
Yeah, that fear of the unknown lurking in the dark. It's primal right. It's really unsettling stuff.
Totally. But do you think those horror elements were like groundbreaking? Or just using familiar techniques?
Well, I think they were more about creating a specific atmosphere. Building up that initial sense of dread.
She comes to you like a sudden chill.
One reviewer mentioned the sound design and jump scares too, which are like the bread and butter of horror.
Yeah, they may not be revolutionary, but they get the job done right.
For sure. It seems like the film is using those well-known horror tactics as a foundation.
A jumping off point.
Exactly. And this reviewer also pointed out the use of reflections through the windows, which always adds a layer of creepiness.
Oh yeah. The view through the windows can be so unsettling. It's like a window into another world.
It messes with your perception, right? Makes you question what's real and what's not. Almost Hitchcockian.
Totally. So all these techniques, they build up the suspense and contribute to that uneasy feeling in the first part of the movie.
Yeah, they do a great job of that. But then both reviewers emphasized how these elements kind of fade as the film goes on.
That's when the shift really happens.
Exactly.
And to highlight just how big of a shift it is, one reviewer actually issued a spoiler warning and a trigger warning before talking about the second half of the film.
Oh, wow. Yeah, about self-harm and self-exit themes, right? That's a serious indicator that the film takes a pretty dark turn.
A turn away from those supernatural scares and into something much heavier.
Right. And that's where the interpretation of the woman in the yard becomes so important.
Who is this woman? Huh? What are you not telling us?
The idea that she's not a literal ghost, but more like a manifestation of Ramona's grief and guilt.
And potentially even her thoughts of self-harm after losing her husband in that car accident.
Exactly. It's like the mysterious figure transforms from an outside threat to something much more internal and symbolic.
And you know, the fact that this woman seems to know so much about Ramona's life, all those details about the accident and her kids.
Ever wish someone else would be strong for once? And instead, you could just disappear.
It all makes sense when you view it through that psychological lens, right? It's like she's haunted by her own inner demons.
Yeah, one reviewer really solidified that interpretation. They described the film as a deep exploration of grief, loss,
Trauma, depression, mental illness.
Oh yeah, that's heavy stuff. And a far cry from the supernatural horror the trailers might lead you to believe.
And it's not just about the themes, but how they're portrayed. It had a really strong emotional reaction to the third act as a parent. Even without giving away any spoilers, it's clear the film touches on some raw nerves.
For sure. And to really get a sense of where The Woman in the Yard fits in with other horror films, we should look at some examples, right?
Yeah.
Movies that play with similar or contrasting ideas.
Okay, great. Let's do that.
All right, so let's start with Darkness Falls from 2003. This one's all about a classic vengeful spirit, Matilda Dixon, also known as the Tooth Fairy.
The Tooth Fairy, okay.
That's creepy already.
Right, and she goes after anyone who sees her.
Larry, don't look at her!
So a purely supernatural threat then.
Exactly. The whole film revolves around this external evil entity, and the main character's struggle to survive,
Yeah.
to protect himself and others from.
I saw something when I was 10. You heard the stories when you were a kid, we all did. I saw her.
And light is their only weapon.
Yeah, it's like their only defense against her. Unlike The Woman in the Yard, where she uses light to cast a shadow.
Yep, that's right. And for the threat in Darkness Falls, it's very clear-cut, right? Defined by that whole Tooth Fairy curse and rooted in a traditional ghost story.
Totally. And that's a big difference from The Woman in the Yard, where the threat is more internal, metaphorical, tied to Ramona's own psychological state.
Okay, so a very different kind of horror.
Yeah, for sure. Now, another interesting one to compare is Lights Out from 2016. This one also has a supernatural entity, Diana.
Diana, okay. And what's her deal?
Well, she only appears in darkness, and get this, she's linked to the mental state of the main character's mother.
Martin said that she was here an hour ago.
She's my friend.
You met Diana at Mulberry Hill when you were taken there for your depression. Am I right?
Whoa, that's trippy. So it's like the mother's mental and emotional state is somehow giving this entity power.
Right, so you've got this external threat, Diana, who's presented as this supernatural being with a tragic backstory.
So there's a reason she's like this.
Yeah, there's a whole story there.
It was a long time ago. And I had a friend named Diana. She was so different, so special.
But then her power is connected to Sophie's emotional state. So you've got this extra layer of psychological depth.
It's like the external and internal are intertwined.
Exactly. And that's similar to The Woman in the Yard, right? Where a character's internal struggles seem to be manifesting as this outside threat.
Right, but there's a key difference too, right?
Yes. Lights Out still gives Diana a very clear supernatural origin, whereas The Woman in the Yard leans more towards a metaphorical interpretation of the woman in black.
Like, we don't know for sure if she's actually real or just a figment of Ramona's imagination.
Right, and that ambiguity is a big part of what makes The Woman in the Yard so unique.
Okay, so Darkness Falls, very straightforward, supernatural horror, lights out, kind of blends the supernatural with psychological elements.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's look at one more, The Woman in Black from 2012. This one's classic gothic horror, very atmospheric.
During afternoon tea, there's a shift in the air. A bone-trembling chill that tells you she's there.
Okay, I love gothic horror. What's the story here?
So it's about a vengeful ghost, Janet Humphrey, who's terrorizing a whole village because of a tragedy in her past, the loss of her child.
Oh, wow. So she's out for revenge.
Yeah, she's driven by grief and anger. And the film really focuses on building suspense and creating that classic haunted house vibe.
So it's all about the atmosphere that scares the vengeful ghost.
Exactly. And the key difference here compared to The Woman in the Yard is that Janet's purely external. She's a ghost with a clear motive seeking revenge. There's not really any suggestion that she's a projection of someone's internal struggles.
Right. She's a separate entity with her own tragic story.
Exactly.
So when we look at all these comparisons, it seems like The Woman in the Yard starts off in familiar horror territory, right? Kind of like Darkness Falls, or even visually like The Woman in Black. But then it takes this sharp turn towards psychological.
Yeah, it's like it uses those familiar tropes as the springboard to explore something much deeper.
It's almost like it's playing with our expectations.
And it reminds me a bit of the underlying ideas in Lights, but without that clear-cut supernatural explanation.
So a blend of different influences, but ultimately something quite unique.
Yeah, it's carving its own path in the horror genre.
And before we wrap up, I think it's worth mentioning that
So even if the story went in a direction that some viewers weren't expecting, the filmmaking itself was top-notch.
Absolutely. Those strong performances, especially by the mother, they really ground those complex themes and make them hit home.
And the unsettling atmosphere in the beginning, all those creepy shadows and reflections, it really sets the stage for the psychological journey that follows.
It's like they use the visual language of horror to draw you in, and then they take you somewhere completely unexpected.
It's pretty clever.
For sure. So to sum it all up, our deep dive into The Woman in the Yard, it reveals a film that might surprise you. It uses the framework of horror, but ultimately it's about something much deeper.
It's about grief, trauma, mental illness, those internal struggles we all face in different ways.
Yeah, it makes you think, right? How often are the monsters we see on screen really just reflections of the battles we're fighting within ourselves?
That's a powerful thought. It makes you look at the horror genre in a whole new light.
For sure. And with The Woman in the Yard's ambiguous ending, it's like the filmmakers are inviting us to reflect on those themes in a personal way, you know?
It's not giving us all the answers, it's leaving us with questions.
Exactly. And maybe that's the point, right? To spark a conversation, to make us think about our own experiences with grief and trauma.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a film that stays with you long after the credits roll.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think.
So if you do end up watching The Woman in the Yard, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know how it resonated with you.
Yeah, join the conversation.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us, and please remember to subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.